Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning, we will be in Isaiah chapter 33, verse 13 through chapter 36, verse 22. You who are far away, listen to what I've done. You who are close by, recognize my strength. Sinners are afraid in Zion. Panic grips the godless. They say, who among us can coexist with destructive fire? Who among us can coexist with unquenchable fire? The one who lives uprightly and speaks honestly, the one who refuses to profit from oppressive measures and rejects a bribe, the one who does not plot violent crimes and does not seek to harm others. This is the person who will live in a secure place. He will find safety in the rocky mountain strongholds. You will have food and a constant supply of water. You will see a king in his splendor. You will see a wide land. Your mind will recall the terror you experienced, and you will ask yourselves, where is the scribe? Where is the one who weighs the money? Where is the one who counts the towers? You will no longer see a defiant people whose language you do not comprehend, whose derisive speech you do not understand. Look at Zion, the city where we hold religious festivals. You will see Jerusalem, a peaceful settlement, a tent that stays put. Its stakes will never be pulled up, none of its ropes will snap in two. Instead, the Lord will rule there as our mighty king. Rivers and wide streams will flow through it. No war galley will enter, no large ships will sail through. For the Lord our ruler, the Lord our commander, the Lord our king, he will deliver us. Though at this time your ropes are slack, the mast is not secured, and the sail is not unfurled, at that time you will divide up a great quantity of loot. Even the lame will drag off plunder. No resident of Zion will say, I am ill. The people who live there will have their sin forgiven. Come near, you nations, and listen. Pay attention, you people. The earth and everything it contains must listen, the world and everything that lives in it. For the Lord is angry at all the nations, and furious with all their armies. He will annihilate them and slaughter them. Their slain will be left unburied. Their corpses will stink. The hills will soak up their blood. All the stars in the sky will fade away. The sky will roll up like a scroll. All its stars will wither, like a leaf withers and falls from a vine, or a fig withers and falls from a tree. He says, indeed, my sword has slaughtered heavenly powers. Look, it now descends on Edom, on the people I will annihilate in judgment. The Lord's sword is dripping with blood. It is covered with fat. It drips with the blood of young rams and goats, and is covered with the fat of rams' kidneys. For the Lord is holding a sacrifice in Bozrah, a bloody slaughter in the land of Edom. Wild oxen will be slaughtered along with them, as well as strong bulls. Their land is drenched with blood. Their soil is covered with fat. For the Lord has planned a day of revenge, a time when he will repay Edom for her hostility toward Zion. Edom's streams will be turned into pitch, and her soil into brimstone. Her land will become burning pitch. Night and day it will burn. Its smoke will ascend continually. Generation after generation it will be a wasteland, and no one will ever pass through it again. Owls and wild animals will live there. All kinds of wild birds will settle in it. The Lord will stretch out over her the measuring line of ruin and the plumb line of destruction. Her nobles will have nothing left to call a kingdom, and all her officials will disappear. Her fortresses will be overgrown with thorns, thickets, and weeds will grow in her fortified cities. Jackals will settle there, ostriches will live there, wild animals and wild dogs will congregate there. Wild goats will bleat to one another. Yes, nocturnal animals will rest there and make for themselves a nest. Owls will make nests and lay eggs there. They will hatch them and protect them. Yes, hawks will gather there, each with its mate. Carefully read the scroll of the Lord. Not one of these creatures will be missing. None will lack a mate, for the Lord has issued the decree, and his own spirit gathers them. He assigns them their allotment. He measures out their assigned place. They will live there permanently. They will settle in it throughout successive generations. Let the desert and dry region be happy. Let the wilderness rejoice and bloom like a lily. Let it richly bloom. Let it rejoice and shout with delight. It is given the grandeur of Lebanon, the splendor of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the grandeur of the Lord, the splendor of our God. Strengthen the hands that have gone limp. Steady the knees that shake. Tell those who panic, be strong, do not fear. Look, your God comes to avenge. With divine retribution he comes to deliver you. Then blind eyes will open, deaf ears will hear. Then the lame will leap like a deer, the mute tongue will shout for joy, for water will flow in the desert, streams in the wilderness. The dry soil will become a pool of water, the parched ground springs of water. Where jackals once lived and sprawled out, grass, reeds, and papyrus will grow. A thoroughfare will be there. It will be called the way of holiness. The unclean will not travel on it. It is reserved for those authorized to use it. Fools will not stray into it. No lions will be there. No ferocious wild animals will be on it. They will not be found there. Those delivered from bondage will travel on it. Those whom the Lord has ransomed will return that way. They will enter Zion with a happy shout. Unending joy will crown them. Happiness and joy will overwhelm them. Grief and suffering will disappear. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah's reign, King Sennacherib of Assyria marched up against all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. The king of Assyria sent his chief advisor from Lachish to King Hezekiah in Jerusalem, along with a large army. The chief advisor stood at the conduit of the upper pool, which is located on the road to the field where they wash and dry cloth. Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, the palace supervisor, accompanied by Shebna the scribe, and Joah, son of Asaph the secretary, went out to meet him. The chief advisor said to them, "Tell Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. What is your source of confidence? Your claim to have a strategy and military strength is just empty talk. In whom are you trusting that you would dare to rebel against me? Look, you must be trusting in Egypt, that splintered reed staff. If someone leans on it for support, it punctures his hand and wounds him. That is what Pharaoh, king of Egypt, does to all who trust in him. Perhaps you will tell me we are trusting in the Lord our God. But Hezekiah is the one who eliminated his high places and altars, and then told the people of Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship at this altar. Now make a deal with my master, the king of Assyria, and I will give you 2,000 horses, provided you can find enough riders for them. Certainly you will not refuse one of my master's minor officials and trust in Egypt for chariots and horsemen. Furthermore, it was by the command of the Lord that I marched up against this land to destroy it. The Lord told me, march up against this land and destroy it." Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah said to the chief advisor, "Speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Don't speak with us in the Judahite dialect in the hearing of the people who are on the wall." But the chief advisor said, "My master did not send me to speak these words only to your master and to you. His message is also for the men who sit on the wall, for they will eat their own excrement and drink their own urine along with you." The chief advisor then stood there and called out loudly in the Judahite dialect, "Listen to the message of the great king, the king of Assyria. This is what the king says. Don't let Hezekiah mislead you, for he is not able to rescue you. Don't let Hezekiah talk you into trusting the Lord by saying, 'The Lord will certainly rescue us. This city will not be handed over to the king of Assyria.' Don't listen to Hezekiah, for this is what the king of Assyria says. Send me a token of your submission and surrender to me. Then each of you may eat from his own vine and fig tree and drink water from his own cistern, until I come and take you to a land just like your own, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Hezekiah is misleading you when he says, 'The Lord will rescue us.' Has any of the gods of the nations rescued his land from the power of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? Indeed, did any gods rescue Samaria from my power? Who among all the gods of these lands have rescued their land from my power? So how can the Lord rescue Jerusalem from my power?" They were silent and did not respond, for the king had ordered, "Don't respond to him." Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, the palace supervisor, accompanied by Shebna the scribe and Joah, son of Asaph the secretary, went to Hezekiah with their clothes torn in grief, and reported to him what the chief advisor had said. Well, that was a lot. Back in chapter 33, it says, "Fear has seized the hypocrites, the sinners in Zion are afraid. Who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with everlasting burnings?" Of course they were afraid. They were afraid because judgment of the Lord was coming. Those who were not afraid to practice their sin were now afraid when righteous judgment comes upon their sin. Though the sinners and hypocrites are terrified at the coming judgment of the Lord's righteous ones are comforted that God is coming to set things right. Look upon Zion, your eyes will see Jerusalem, a quiet home. In the midst of the Assyrian threat, God will preserve Jerusalem. Not one of its stakes will ever be removed. A place of broad streams and rivers. God's blessing on Zion would bring broad rivers and streams to this once barren desert land. This chapter, so full of compelling imagery, presents a picture of Jerusalem as a kind of Near Eastern Venice or Amsterdam, or to place it in its historical context, like the great cities of Egypt or Mesopotamia. Most great civilizations have grown up around important rivers. Israel in general and Jerusalem in particular were exceptions to this. Then the indignation of the Lord against all nations in chapter 34. In the immediate context, Isaiah continues the thought of the coming judgment against the Assyrians, but in the larger context, we can see this passage as an announcement of the judgment to come upon the nations during the Great Tribulation. Jesus and many Old Testament prophets plainly told us of a coming time he called the Great Tribulation, when because of the judgment of God, conditions on earth would be the worst human history had ever seen. Revelation chapters 6, 8 through 9, and 16 through 18 describe this horrific time when there will be widespread ecological, economic, cosmic, and human catastrophe on a level never before known in history. The idea that this chapter relates to the very end times goes back a long time among Christian teachers. Eusebius, with many other ancients, will have this chapter to be understood of the end of the world and the last judgment. Come near, you nations, to hear, and heed, you people. It made sense for Isaiah to address the nations in light of how terrible the Great Tribulation will be, when we consider how prophecy has been fulfilled and how the stage is set. For even more fulfilled prophecy we should hear and take heed. Indeed, it shall come down on Edom. The Edomites were near neighbors to Israel and often bitter rivals. The Edomites rejoiced whenever the people of Judah or Israel were afflicted, so Isaiah focused on the judgment that will come against Edom, using them as a single example of the large judgment that will come upon all the nations. Edom was a sister nation to Israel, but it hated Israel more than any other nation. Throughout all of history, we see a burning hatred of Edom against Israel. It is for this reason that Edom is frequently presented as a representative of all the nations that hated the Jews. Edom had derided and attacked Judah for centuries, but now God would avenge this hateful attitude that is so characteristic of the world's ways. Its streams will be turned into pitch, and its dust into brimstone. In this day of the Lord's vengeance, known as the Great Tribulation, there will be unparalleled ecological disaster. Before Jesus Christ returns at the end of the Great Tribulation, 1/3 of the earth's vegetation, 1/3 of the oceans, and 1/3 of the fresh waters will be destroyed and unusable. But the pelican and the porcupine shall possess it. Much of the earth will be so destroyed that in many places only wild animals will be able to live. The wild goat shall bleat to its companion. The King James Version translates wild goat as satyr, which was a mythical demonic creature. The Hebrew word here is ser, which is, as an adjective, means hairy, and as a noun refers to a male goat. It is possible that Isaiah meant that wild goats would inhabit the desolate regions of Edom, or he may mean that it will be the haunt of demonic spirits. Also, the night creature shall rest there. The Hebrew word for night creature is Lilith, which is the feminine word of the word night. Old Jewish superstitions make Lilith a person who was a beautiful demon of the night, who seduced men and killed children. It is possible that Isaiah used the term to describe the demonic habitation of Edom after God's judgment. And then you have a description of this highway of holiness. After the judgment on the nations described in Isaiah 34, God will bring a beautiful restoration. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice. This promise was proved true in many ways, and in some senses will yet be fulfilled. The promise was true in the immediate term when Judah was restored after the invasion of the Assyrians were turned back. The promise is true in the longer term, as a modern-day Israel has turned the wilderness and the wasteland into productive farms and truly has made the desert blossom as the rose. The promise will be true in the ultimate fulfillment of this prophecy when God restores the ecology of the world after the end of the Great Tribulation and the Battle of Armageddon. Yeah, and I think the juxtaposition here of those who trust in their own strength and indeed are wicked, and the eventual desolation and judgments that will come from that, versus those who trust in God and His righteousness, and the desert blossoming, and rivers appearing in the desert. And then we have this branch into a narrative with Sennacherib attacking Hezekiah and Jerusalem here. But this is only after he has seized many of the fortified cities of Judah and taken them. So this says in the 14th year of King Hezekiah. This was about the year 700 BC, during the reign of the godly King Hezekiah of Judah. The events of this chapter are also recorded in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. This is history at its best, not dull recital of statistics and dates, but an account which enables us to sense the haughty arrogance of the Assyrian and the chilling clutch of despair at the hearts of the Israelites. This Assyrian invasion has been the broad background for much of Isaiah's prophecy in Isaiah chapter 1 through 35. Now Isaiah gives us a historical record of what happened during the time he prophesied about. The Assyrian army swept down from the north, conquering Syria and Israel, as Isaiah prophesied in Isaiah 8, 3 and 4, and many other passages. The Assyrian army then came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them, as Isaiah prophesied, in Isaiah 7, 16, and 17, and many other passages. Then the king of Assyria sent the Rabshakeh with a great army from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. Who was this Rabshakeh? Actually, it is a title, not a name. It describes the field commander for the Assyrian army who represented the Assyrian king Sennacherib. Rabshakeh, an Assyrian title, possibly originally chief cupbearer, but by this time some high officer of state. The mention of Lachish is important historically. Lachish was 30 miles southwest of Jerusalem. Archaeologists have discovered a pit there with the remains of about 1,500 casualties of Sennacherib's attack. In the British Museum, you can see the Assyrian carving depicting their siege of the city of Lachish, which was an important fortress city of Judah. He stood by the aqueduct from the upper pool. Eliakim, Shebna, Joah came out to him. Rabshakeh seems to be in complete command of the situation. He can walk right into the city of Jerusalem and stand at the crucial water supply, which would be Jerusalem's lifeline in a siege attack. As he stands there, 3 officials from Hezekiah's government come to meet him. And then Rabshakeh is critical of Hezekiah and Israel in general, saying, "What are you putting your confidence in? Egypt? Well, Egypt is a splintered reed staff that pierces the hand of those who trust in it. And God? Well, it's King Hezekiah who took down his high places and altars, not realizing that the God of Israel demanded that they only ever have one altar and worship in one place. And he even says that God himself said to him to come up against Israel. Yeah. This was the finishing blow of a brilliant attack. Hezekiah, God told me to destroy you. I'm just doing his will, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, so you may as well surrender. Significantly, we can say that Rabshakeh was partially correct. God was with him, and his attack on Judah fulfilled God's prophesied plan. In conquering Syria, in conquering Israel, and in bringing Judah to the brink, the Assyrians did the will of God. God prophesied that all this would happen, and he allowed it to happen, so his prophesied plan would be fulfilled. However, we should never think that God tempted an innocent man with an evil plan. In fact, even though God predicted and planned this invasion of the Assyrians, Rabshakeh may have been lying indeed when he said, "The Lord said to me." God did not have to do anything special to direct the bloodthirsty, conquest-hungry Assyrians to attack Syria, Israel, and Judah. He simply allowed the Assyrians to carry out the corrupt desires of their evil hearts. Therefore, the Assyrians could never excuse themselves by saying, "We were doing the Lord's will," even as Judas could never make the excuse regarding his wicked betrayal of Jesus. Yeah, and ultimately everything happens according to his will anyway, and that God works together everything for his good and the good of those who love him. So. Yeah. Has any one of the gods of the nations delivered its land from the hand of the king of Syria? Rabshakeh's speech was intended to destroy their trust in God. His message is simple and cunning in its satanic logic. The gods of other nations have not been able to protect them against us. Your God is just like one of them and can't protect you either. Carrying on, Galatians chapter 5, verses 13 through 26. For you were called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity to indulge your flesh, but through love, serve one another. For the whole law can be summed up in a single commandment, namely, you must love your neighbor as yourself. However, if you continually bite and devour one another, beware that you are not consumed by one another. But I say, live by the Spirit, and you will not carry out the desires of the flesh. For the flesh has desires that are opposed to the Spirit, and the Spirit has desires that are opposed to the flesh. For these are in opposition to each other, so that you cannot do what you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, depravity, idolatry, sorcery, hostilities, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish rivalries, dissensions, factions, envying, murder, drunkenness, carousing, and similar things. I'm warning you, as I had warned you before, those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. For those who belong to Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us also behave in accordance with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, being jealous of one another. We've been called to liberty. Paul has made the point over and over again. The Christian life is the life of liberty. Jesus came to set the captives free, not to keep them in bondage or put them in bondage all over again. It is worth asking if people see us as people of freedom and liberty. Often Christians are seen as people more bound up and hung up than anyone else is. He is not saying that a certain measure of liberty was grudgingly accorded believers. He is saying that freedom is of the essence of being Christian. It is the fundamental basis of all Christian living. Only do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh. The great fear of the legalist is that liberty will be used as an opportunity for the flesh. The idea is that people will just go out and sin as they please, then say to a spineless God, "I'm sorry, please forgive me," and then go on doing whatever they want again. Paul recognized the danger of this attitude, so he warned against it here. These ones have been called to liberty. As Paul put it earlier in the chapter, they have been made free by Jesus Christ. Now they are called to stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free. Yeah. Rendell on opportunity. This term was applied in military language to a base of operations and generally to any starting point for action. We are tempted to use our liberty and Jesus as a base of operations for selfish sin. But we should not. Because if we truly love Jesus and recognize what he's done for us, then we should do the things that he wants us to do and not our own selfish sin. And ultimately, the things that our Creator wants us to do are the best things for us to do. Yeah. And you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. There's no way anyone can fulfill the lust of the flesh as they walk in the Spirit. The two simply don't go together. The Holy Spirit doesn't move in us to gratify our fallen desires and passions, but to teach us about Jesus and to guide us in the path of Jesus. This is the key to righteous living, walking in the Spirit, not living under the domination of the law. Yeah, and so you see also here the results of walking in the flesh, adultery, fornication, and so on. But you also see here the results of walking in the Spirit, love, joy, peace, and so on. So, like it was said so long ago, today I set before you life and death, blessings and consequences, so choose life so that you may live, type thing. Carrying on, Psalm 64, verses 1 through 10. Listen to me, O God, as I offer my lament. Protect my life from the enemy's terrifying attacks. Hide me from the plots of evil men, from the crowd of evildoers. They sharpen their tongues like a sword. They aim their arrow, a slanderous charge, in order to shoot down the innocent in secluded places. They shoot at him suddenly and are unafraid of retaliation. They encourage one another to carry out their evil deed. They plan how to hide snares and boast, "Who will see them?" They devise unjust schemes. They disguise as a well-conceived plot. Man's inner thoughts cannot be discovered. But God will shoot at them suddenly. They will be wounded by an arrow. Their slander will bring about their demise. All who see them will shudder, and all people will fear. They will proclaim what God has done and reflect on his deeds. The godly will rejoice in the Lord and take shelter in him. All the morally upright will boast. And finally, Proverbs 23:23. Acquire truth and do not sell it, wisdom and discipline and understanding. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.